Welcome to the Charles Carroll Society Show. I am your host, the self-appointed bard of the American Readout. This is a breaking news show out of our normal things that we're going to discuss. Right now, some of the most significant things to happen ever in the Catholic Church are happening. Essentially, one of Pope Francis's archbishops has personally accused him of knowing about cardinals who were sexually exploiting children, teenagers, and young men, covered up that fact, i.e. did not tell others of the danger that this cardinal continued to represent to the children of the faithful and the young men of the faithful, and essentially promoted Cardinal McCarrick to one of his top advisors and listened to Cardinal McCarrick as Cardinal McCarrick promoted other homosexualist priests into being and higher up in the Catholic Church, the cardinals. Let us start with what Pope Francis said. These are his words, quote, "Let me say clearly, quite clearly, that sexual abuse is a horrible sin, completely opposite and in contradiction to what Christ and the Church teaches us." These are from the Pope's prepared remarks stated on September 21st. That is why I reiterate today, once again, that the Church at all levels, will respond with the application of the most firm measures to those who have betrayed their calling and abused the children of God. Cardinal Wuerl is still the Archbishop of Washington, D.C., and Pope Francis is still the Pope. Again, this is probably one of the most important news of the Catholic Church since our former Pope, Pope Benedict, fled before the wolves and left his sheep at the mercy of homosexuals. Many of you and I have prayed for senior Catholic clergy to speak out about the homosexual mafia that runs the Vatican and Catholic dioceses worldwide. Well, one of them has. He has released his testimony, not just a statement. This is a man who's 70-something years old. He is a cardinal and a pastor, and he has released 11-page testimony where he states what he says is the absolute truth. In this 11-page written testimony, laying it all out there, Archbishop Carlo Maria Viganò has said, in 2008, Pope Emeritus Benedict limited Cardinal McCarrick to a life of prayer and penance. He has stated that Archbishop Viganò personally told Pope Francis about this. He personally told our current Pope that Cardinal McCarrick had been limited to a life of prayer and penance because of his rapes of children, teenage boys, and using his position of power to sexually assault young adult men. Archbishop Viganò continues, Pope Francis removed these limitations on Cardinal McCarrick himself. He allowed him to travel. Previously, Pope Benedict had refused to allow this man to be near a seminary. He had refused Cardinal McCarrick to be around masses and around other children, seminaries and young adults, and he had said, you must dedicate yourself to a life of prayer and penance. Pope Francis himself made the decision that Cardinal McCarrick was going to be removed from this. He yet again exposed seminarians to this man who is a serial rapist. Pope Francis then made Cardinal McCarrick, who we now know is a serial rapist, homosexual predatory priest, his trusted counselor. Pope Francis valued Cardinal McCarrick's close relationship to our past president, Obama. Former Cardinal McCarrick then pushed for the appointments of other homosexualist clergy who were elected to be cardinal over the objections of the Vatican's embassy in the United States. The Vatican embassy in the United States normally submits names for people who to become cardinals to the Pope. They did not submit these names, yet Cardinal McCarrick submitted these names apparently directly to the Pope. And these men, who we now, almost all of them, we have very viable allegations of homosexual predatory behavior on all of their parts. they were elected to be cardinals by this rapist McCarrick and Pope Francis. Archbishop Carlo Maria Viganò, 77, was the apostolic nuncio to the United States. This is essentially the Vatican's ambassador to the U.S. from October 2011 until April 2016. The Archbishop stated at a private meeting with Pope Francis that Pope Francis asked him, "What do you think of Cardinal McCarrick? What is Cardinal McCarrick like?" To which the Archbishop responded, he has corrupted generations of seminarians and priests, and Pope Benedict ordered him to withdraw to a life of prayer and penance. This was told directly to Pope Francis. The appointments of powerful homosexualist CUPICH of Chicago, of a powerful Cardinal Tobin to Newark, was promoted by homosexual abusers McCarrick, Worrell, and another guy, Maraggia, Maradiga. I'm butchering these Italian names. Archbishop Viganò says the appointments of Blaise to Chicago, Joseph Tobin to Newark was orchestrated by McCarrick, Worrell, and Maraggia. These men are united by a wicked pack of abuses by the first, and at least cover-up of abuses, if not abuse themselves, by the other two. Please note that McCarrick personally bragged that he and a cabal of what we call homosexualist cardinals, they refer to themselves as liberal-minded cardinals, were influential in getting Pope Francis elected as Pope, which some may not realize is against Catholic law. You're not allowed to create cabals and groups to advocate for a person who's going to become Pope. Everyone knew that Cardinal McCarrick was a rapist, yet he was not allowed to vote, but he was allowed to speak to those who would vote right before they voted. Why are these men who are not allowed to vote invited back to speak to the people who are trying to make the decisions? On 11 October 2013, former Cardinal McCarrick said, he told an audience that before the cardinal electors went into the general conversations, he was approached by a, quote, a very interesting and influential Italian cardinal. The influential Italian cardinal visited McCarrick at the seminary where McCarrick was staying in Rome. Once again, McCarrick is a known rapist of young men, and when he goes to Rome, he ensures that he stays at male-only colleges. This very brilliant man, very influential man in Rome, said, "What about Bergoglio?" Pope Francis's former name. "Does he have a chance to become Pope?" McCarrick said he was surprised at the question and replied, "I do not think so, because no one mentioned his name."
Before the conclave, nobody thought there was a chance for Bergoglio. Cardinal Scola, the Archbishop of Milan, was the favorite, as you know, he was in all the papers. And he was 3-1, which is pretty decent, low odds. And other cardinals, Cardinal O'Malley was like 20-1. But he somehow stuck in Cardinal Bergoglio, who was 200-1. About maybe just before we went into the general conversations when everybody can talk, a very interesting and influential Italian gentleman came to ask if he'd come to see me. So I said, sure, and he came to see me at the seminary, the American college where I was staying. We sat down. This is a very brilliant man, very influential man in Rome, and we talked about a number of things. He had a favor to ask me for back here in the United States. But then he said, "What about Bergoglio?" And I was surprised at the question. I said, "What about him?" He said, "Does he have a chance?" I said, "I don't think so, because no one's mentioned his name. He hasn't been in his mind. I don't think it's on anybody's mind to vote for him." He said, "He could do it, you know." I said, "What could he do?" He said, "He could reform the church." We gave him 5 years. He could put us back on target. He's 76. They said, yeah, 5 years. If you had 5 years, the Lord working through Bergoglio in 5 years could make the church over again. I said, that's an interesting thing. He said, I know you're his friend. I said, I hope I am. He said, talk him up.
This group that we talk about, this homosexual mafia, they call themselves the St. Gallen Mafia, Gallen. They don't call themselves homosexuals themselves, which is what they are. They call themselves influential, liberal-minded cardinals in the Catholic Church. This may be news to the larger Catholic community, but not to subscribers of the Charles Carroll Society blog. 2 days after the election of Pope Francis on 15 March 2013, I published a post titled simply Pope Francis. And I stated on that post in 15 March 2013, okay. And I said, quote, okay, now the unvarnished truth as I see it. It appears so many cardinals were so afraid of what was in the secret, the Spanish Cardinal Julian Hernandez report, that they have appointed a man who will ensure it never sees the light of day. I expect Pope Francis to be hostile to traditional Catholics, covering for the Jesuit perversions, and continue to appoint liberal priests. And tell us, American Catholics, to bend down and lick the ring of our police state and our want to be progressive rulers. That's what I said 2 days after Pope Francis was elected. And you can go over to Charles Carroll Society show notes and there'll be a link to that blog post. Previous to that, on the 23rd of February 2013, I published a blog post titled, Why the Pope Resigned, a Theory. I go into significant details of the Spanish Cardinal Julian Hernandez report. Now, it's important to know that this Spanish Cardinal was a member of the Opus Dei. The Opus Dei are a very traditional neoconservative group in the Novus Ordo Church, and they are extraordinarily loyal to the papacy, period. But so this cardinal was asked by Pope Benedict to see about the corruption in money and to see about the corruption in homosexuals in the church. I stated on that blog post on 23 February 2013, the results of the investigation were clear. It found that there was an influential lobbying group within the Vatican as well as outside the organization. The Salesians, the Jesuits, the Ligurians. But the biggest shock came last October when the Pope learned about a group identified as the Gay Lobby. For the first time, the word homosexuality had been mentioned on written text directly to Pope Benedict. For the first time, the word blackmail was identified, followed by improper influence or as improper influence. As is traditional in the Vatican, the complete report was provided to the Pope, who then sealed it with the label of pontifical secret. I said that a month before Pope Francis was elected. And again, on the show notes in the Charles Carroll Society, you'll see this. Thus, this shocking news that Pope Francis himself knew about homosexual rapists in the church, covered for them, promoted them, and then used them as counselors, and then let them promote other homosexual rapists into the cardinals, is not news to subscribers of this tiny. Stay tuned. I'll continue to cover this issue and other issues regarding the breakdown and shakeup of the church worldwide. And we all can continue to pray that the truth of this comes out and that the Holy Ghost and the Mother of Heaven continues to protect our church. Viva Cristo Rey, Viva Cristo Rey, Viva Cristo Rey y the Virgin Guadalupe.